Hey, what's up everyone? This is going to be my long overdue update on the Big Blue. I was out of town for a few weeks and so I couldn't work on this, but during that time a lot of parts showed up. I got my laminate, I got my parts powder coated, some artwork showed up, a lot of things arrived, and so in this last week I was able to really plow through this, and so buckle up, this is going to be a long update. So like I said, the laminate showed up, and so that was my first order of business, and so I needed to prep the cabinet for that, so I removed all the T-molding, and then also that disc that covered the link hole in the cabinet. Remember that it was like that black disc, and that actually ended up being metal. It was a legit metal part that had a bracket on the inside, and so I'm completely certain that that is factory, which I thought was pretty cool. Then I removed the PCB, the amp, both of the power supplies, and then all of that junk that was in the bottom of the cabinet, and there was a lot. In fact, I recorded exactly what I found. I'll show you that. Okay, so in the midst of that giant mess at the bottom of the cabinet, this is what we ended up with. We got the manual for Marvel Superheroes, 14 micro switches, which I'm guessing are shot. They just look terrible. Let's see, a bunch of tokens, and as far as I could tell, they're very oxidized, but it looks like there's at least 3 different arcades this came from. Doodles, Tilt, and Star Castle. And then we've got, let's see, 61 cents, it looks like, a big washer, and a shit ton of broken glass. My God, there's a lot. This is, I mean, I want to know what the hell broke inside that cabinet. Jesus. But yeah, that's all glass. So it's still dirty at the bottom of that cabinet, but it's much better having this stuff out of there. So I'm always excited when there's a manual. I always like that, a hard copy. But yeah, there it is. So then it was time to apply the laminate, and this is probably I want to say it's like the 5th cabinet I've done. But as with any of these other games, you always need to start by roughening up the cabinet. You don't want a completely smooth surface. And with this, where it's melamine, I had to take some like 80 grit sandpaper with my orbital sander and just get the cabinet rough enough that the contact cement can adhere nicely. So that was the first order of business. And then I went from there and applied the laminate to both of the main sides, which is pretty straightforward. You don't have to really trim a whole lot since this is a really deep cabinet. And I always like to use the wood dowels, especially as a one-man job. If you have 2 people, it's a lot easier. But once you lay that sheet down and it makes contact, it is permanent. So there isn't a whole lot of wiggle room. So those wood dowels are a lifesaver. And then of course I had to laminate the front of, the kick plate. And I get a lot of questions about how I cut the laminate to size. And what I use is just a cheap scoring tool. You can get them on Amazon for like $8 or $9 or something like that. They're really cheap. And I like to use a heavy duty straight edge and clamp it down on like a piece of wood. So you got the laminate clamped down on like a piece of wood, and then you can use like a Sharpie, to measure it. But then I will just run that scoring tool right against that straight edge, and you can get some really good, straight, precise cuts. And especially with this cabinet, it was really important. And so what I'll do is I'll cut it to exactly the width of the cabinet, because you don't really have much wiggle room there. I mean, you could remove the front panel, but I typically don't. And then I'll leave a little bit of an overhang on the top and the bottom. That way you have a little bit of wiggle room. But the trick with that is that with the router and using a flush trim bit, you have the side panels that you get hung up on. And so I will use my router as much as I can, and then for the remaining little lips, I will use a Dremel with like a cutting wheel, or you could even use like the sanding bit, and just to get the last little pieces off. So then after the cabinet was done, I applied laminate to the marquee box, and then also the control panel. And the control panel was by far the trickiest of all the parts because I actually did it with it completely assembled. Now, you could take it apart. There's little wood blocks on the inside that kind of holds everything together, and they're screwed down. But what I discovered was that they're also glued down, and I really didn't want to fuss with prying those free, having to re-glue them, or even cut new blocks. So I did it as it was, and it came out great, but it was very tedious because aside from the main front panel, I had to cut everything exactly to size, but it did come out really good. And I will say this about the cabinet, I've never dealt this much with laminate on one cabinet before, because there are so many pieces, you know, with the marquee box and the control panel. So after the laminate, I did do a few things I didn't record. They were pretty insignificant. Like I repainted the bottom, the base there, black. I also added new leg levelers. I repainted all of the bolts and the screws that you would see on the exterior, things like that. And then I spent a long time cleaning thoroughly the inside of the cabinet now that the laminate was done. And so I didn't record that because it's pretty monotonous stuff. But after that, I did add new T-molding, and just like the laminate, this cabinet has so much T-molding, I think I ended up using like something like 55 feet or something like that. It's some ridiculous amount. But, you know, because the cabinet needed it, the marquee box needed it, the control panel needed it. Everything basically has T-molding on this cabinet. But it all came out great. And then I did a few things again that I didn't record that you don't really need to see. Like I obviously put the monitor back in, the PCB and the amp, things like that. So then I ran to the local craft store and I picked up some real heavy duty black cardboard and also some poster board so that I could cut new bezels. And the way I go about doing that is I just flatten them out because, you know, the originals were pretty warped. I just clamp those down and then I use a nice sharp X-Acto and just trace around everything. For the outer one, the square one here, I used a straight edge just so I could get a real square cutout. But the interior one, I just traced with an X-Acto blade, and they came out great. I didn't show this, but I did run some semi-gloss paint over the outer bezel here, and it came out real sharp. So real happy with that. So on the note of the monitor and the bezels, I did run to the local glass shop. I had them cut me a brand new piece of plexiglass to go over this. I could have probably done it myself, but when I added up like what a sheet of a 1/4 inch, because I think it's a 1/4 inch plexiglass was, and my time, it ended up not really saving me all that much. So I just went to the glass shop and they hammered it out like within minutes. So came out real nice. I don't have it on here yet, but you know, that's coming. Then I decided that I would install the new power supply. And the first thing right off the bat that was a problem is that the new power supply is way smaller than the original. The original is just a monster. It's a brick, it's a beast, and it dwarfs the new one. And normally that wouldn't be a problem, but the way that the cutout of the cabinet is for the power supply, if I put the new one in there, you can't actually reach the power plug. It sits too low. And so what I did was I ran to Home Depot, picked up some scrap wood for just a couple bucks. Now, mind you, I am not a woodworker by any means. When it comes to woodworking skills, I'm pretty much a novice. But, you know, for something makeshift like this, what I did was I just cut a few pieces of wood just to the right height, mounted them in the cabinet just to kind of build like a little shelf. And then I mounted the power supply on top of that, and it worked out. It's not real pretty, but it did the job. After that, I installed my new marquee light in the marquee box, and I'm really happy with how that turned out. Lately, I've been really liking these lights designed to go under cabinets, and this one that I got off Amazon is really bright, and it works really slick. It fit just perfect inside that marquee box, and then here you can see what it looks like if I put a marquee over it. It is perfect. And with that done, then I mounted the marquee box back up on top of the cabinet. And then I just reinstalled all the parts I had powder coated, and they look so sharp. This type of black, I believe the shade is called Blackjack. And it is, I just really like it. It kind of reminds me almost of a satin. It's in between a gloss and a flat, and everything just looks real sharp. It matches everything real nice. And then the last thing I did, which I did not record, was I just cleaned up the coin door parts, and then I added a couple of LEDs behind them to replace the original incandescent bulbs, which for me, I always think look sharper, but again, personal preference there. So that's it. I know that's a lot, but yeah, this thing's coming together quick. I'm really hoping I have this done within the next week and a half, because I have to have this done by then because I'm going out of town again. And when I come back, my place has to be clean. So I have a tight deadline, but it's coming together nicely. The next order of business, I have a you know, kind of a short list really, is mostly finishing up the control panel. As you can see, there's no control panel on here. It's so close to being done, but I'm waiting on, it's the silliest thing, I'm waiting on the button and joystick decals, because I don't want to slap everything together and then have to take it all apart. Those go, you know, over their respected areas on the control panel. So I'm waiting on that. Those are supposed to be here like Wednesday or Thursday. And then beyond that, it's just kind of the fun stuff, really. Installing the multi-kit, the DarkSoft multi-kit, setting up the Mr. FPGA. In fact, just today, I got the Mr. Cade JAMA board for it. So that's ready to start setting up. I'm trying to think what else. Still waiting on some artwork. I've got the side art. I need I've got a marquee, but I'm not real happy with it. So I've got a second one coming. The colors just look a little oversaturated and warm to me, and it's all, you know, minor OCD stuff. I'm trying to think. Other than the artwork, the control panel, oh, and then I do have to do some minor monitor adjustments, just the final stuff, you know, like tweaking the size and everything to fit the monitor. I haven't done that yet. That's usually like the last order of business for me. And I have started rigging up the cabinet for streaming. The video section's done. I still need to do the audio, but really those are all minor things. I feel like I can get this game playable probably this week to the point where I could put it in the row and call it good. At least, you know, I don't need to have the multi-kit installed in order for this to be ready to go. So nearing the finish line. This was a huge week for getting stuff done. I'm really happy with it. But yeah, I think just one, maybe two more updates here, and it should be ready to go. So I'm excited. Thanks for watching. I'll see you guys in the next video. Take care.